Look closely at your parrot standing on its wooden perch as it intensely zips a single feather through its beak over and over again. You probably assume your companion is just grooming or playing happily, but this seemingly innocent routine is actually a dire neurological cry for help that most owners completely misinterpret. Your bird's nervous system is firing frantic distress signals, trapped in a flawed neural self-soothing loop that will soon drive this magnificent creature to systematically destroy its own plumage. Embracing true avian understanding by subscribing to this channel is your first step toward prevention. We must decode these silent psychological warnings before this hidden mental breakdown forces them to start tearing away their feathers. Observe your bird pacing a strict, unyielding 2-inch line back and forth across its wooden perch, repeating the exact same sequence of steps dozens of times. The common anthropomorphic blind spot occurs when owners chuckle at this behavior, filming it for social media because they believe their parrot is dancing, exercising, or merely showing a quirky personality trait. In reality, this is high-fidelity neuroscience revealing a profound failure of the captive environment. This pacing is a classic stereotypic movement, the precise avian equivalent of an institutionalized human rocking back and forth in a confined cell. When a parrot faces chronic environmental stagnation or unpredictable household chaos, its hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis floods the body with cortisol. Starved of meaningful cognitive stimulation, the basal ganglia defaults to a degenerative neural loop, trapping the bird in an involuntary motor routine to blunt psychological suffering. To offer the deep act of love your parrot desires, you must actively break this neurological circuit by restructuring their spatial architecture. Move the perch to a secure area where at least one side faces a solid, protective wall, reducing the need for constant defensive scanning. Replace static perches with variable texture, foraging branches that force the brain to switch from involuntary motor habits to active, conscious problem solving. By challenging their minds with complex mechanical puzzles, you satisfy their deep evolutionary need for environmental mastery. But when the anxious mind can no longer pace away its internal distress, the underlying anxiety alters something even more intimate, transforming the bird's unique vocal identity. Listen to the voice of your companion when its natural, incredibly diverse repertoire of mimicry, whistles, and joyful chatter suddenly flattens into a repetitive, metallic click or a single unvarying shriek emitted at precise, mechanical intervals. The dangerous anthropomorphic blind spot here is that owners often feel relieved by this predictable vocal behavior, assuming their bird is simply entertaining itself quietly or practicing its vocabulary in a peaceful mood. This shift actually represents a severe vocal distortion caused by chronic neurochemical exhaustion. Wild parrots possess an incredibly sophisticated vocal control system governed by the high vocal center and the robust nucleus of the archipallium. When chronic anxiety takes root, elevated glucocorticoids cause direct neurotoxic damage, suppressing the neuroplasticity of these delicate vocal areas. The rich, socially adaptive communication of a flock animal shrinks into a primitive, low-frequency distress drone, a stark neurological stutter showing that the brain can no longer process environmental inputs normally. The act of love required here is a deliberate acoustic calibration. Never respond to this monotone drone with total silence or matching angry shouts, which only confirms their internal panic. Instead, introduce targeted acoustic enrichment by playing soft, natural soundscapes of flowing water and gentle, distant wild flock calls. This specific auditory stimulation safely reactivates the high vocal center, coaxing the brain back into complex, healthy communication patterns. Yet, a distorted voice is merely a prelude to physical paralysis, as the anxious bird soon begins to treat its familiar living space as an active combat zone. Watch your bird sit completely rigid on its branch, its feathers compressed tightly against its body, its eyes wide and pinned as it tracks a drifting dust mote or a distant ceiling fan with absolute terror. Owners frequently fall into a tragic anthropomorphic blind spot by praising their bird for being exceptionally well-behaved, calm, or quiet during these moments, mistaking a state of paralyzed survival panic for peaceful discipline. This frozen startle is a state of extreme hypervigilance driven by an overactivated amygdala. Parrots are highly evolved prey animals, designed to constantly scan for predators, but chronic domestic stress burns out the negative feedback loops of their central nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system becomes permanently dominant, saturating peripheral tissues with epinephrine. The bird cannot rest because its brain is trapped in a waking nightmare of anticipated trauma, waiting for an attack that never comes. You could deliver a profound act of love by systematically dismantling this state of hypervigilance. Look at your home through the eyes of a prey species. Elevate the enclosure so the bird sits safely above human eye level, and install opaque privacy shields over one half of the cage. Removing rapid, overhead movements instantly disarms the overstimulated amygdala, sending a clear biological signal to the brain that survival is absolutely guaranteed. When the domestic environment offers no physical escape from this invisible danger, the bird's locked in terror inevitably turns inward, targeting its own flesh. Watch the parrot run its beak down the shaft of a primary wing feather, zipping and unzipping the barbs continuously for hours, far beyond the functional needs of basic daily hygiene. The anthropomorphic blind spot here is incredibly common, as owners smile and praise their clean pet for keeping its feathers tidy, completely missing the thin line between grooming and self-mutilation. This obsessive zipping is not hygiene. It is a compulsive behavioral pathology. The repetitive mechanical friction of the beak against the feather shaft stimulates epidermal mechanoreceptors, triggering a localized release of endorphins to temporarily numb psychological pain. However, this constant friction damages the delicate microreceptors beneath the feather follicle, creating chronic localized inflammation and microperitis. This intense, invisible itching creates a vicious cycle, forcing the bird to bite even harder to numb the area, setting the stage for total self-destruction. The act of love your parrot desperately needs at this tipping point is immediate topical and tactile intervention. Sow the inflamed follicles by misting the bird with pure, aloe-infused water to reduce the physical sensation of microperitis. Simultaneously, provide high tactile destruction toys made of soft balsa wood, raffia, and natural fibers. This redirects the compulsive mechanical energy of the beak away from the skin and onto appropriate, destructible materials. If this cycle is not broken, the brief endorphin highs will fail, the frantic self-mutilation will pause, and the bird will sink into the final, most dangerous stage of neurological collapse. See your parrot sit quietly on the lowest corner of its enclosure, its head slightly tucked, its feathers permanently fluffed, staring blankly out into the room while completely ignoring its toys, its food, and your voice. The final, most heartbreaking anthropomorphic blind spot occurs when owners celebrate this sweet, low-maintenance pet that no longer screams or demands attention, believing the bird has finally settled down into a calm domestic lifestyle. In truth, this quiet state is learned helplessness, representing the complete functional exhaustion of the dopaminergic reward system. After months of unmanaged anxiety, the avian brain downregulates its dopamine receptors to protect its neural pathways from severe excitotoxicity. The bird has learned that no amount of screaming or pacing can alter its stressful reality, causing it to mentally check out. It slips into a vegetative depressive state where the fundamental connection between external stimuli and life preservation is severed. Reviving your bird from this velvet withdrawal is the ultimate act of love, requiring a patient, systematic neurological reboot. You must establish a rock-solid, predictable 12-hour circadian light cycle to stabilize baseline neurochemistry. Do not force interaction. Instead, reintroduce tiny, guaranteed mental wins by hand feeding a single favorite seed or rewarding the smallest positive movement. Slowly, you can rebuild the broken neural pathways of trust, coaxing their brilliant mind back to reality. A single feather falling silently to the ground is a stark reminder that a bird's plumage is never just a beautiful ornament. It is an evolutionary masterpiece, refined across millions of years of aerodynamic survival, designed to navigate boundless skies. Every feather is a direct physical extension of a complex avian mind built for freedom. When a companion parrot systematically strips away its own protective coat, it represents a profound tragedy born from our human inability to read their silent, microscopic language. Healing these magnificent creatures requires us to look past our own assumptions and actively protect the delicate minds beneath the feathers. If this deep journey into avian neuroscience has transformed how you view your companion, please share this video to help save another captive bird before the self-destruction begins. Subscribe to join our mission as true guardians of their wild minds. And leave a comment below describing your bird's unique daily habits so we can decode their secret needs together.